Welcome to Women Mastering Midlife, where we dive deep into the rich complexities of womanhood in our middle years. I'm your host, Victoria Byrd, a pharmacist, certified women's health coach, and your guide on this transformative journey. Whether you're navigating perimenopause, thriving in menopause, or mastering midlife's many transitions, this is your weekly dose of expert guidance, compassionate support, and a judgment-free space to explore it all. Here, we're empowering women to master midlife on their terms, reclaiming our health, our happiness, and our power. Together, we'll rewrite the narrative around this remarkable stage of life, from something to dread into a beautiful, bold transition. I'm so glad you're here. Christine Marie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Victoria.
So I have actually followed your company, Rosebud Woman, I went through the Integrative Women's Health Institute in 2021, and Jessica Drummond introduced us to your products, and I received samples, quickly became, an advocate, an affiliate. I share your products with women all the time. I use them myself, and I think that coming from a woman who is living the experience, it's even more profound of an impact, I feel like. And it's why I wanted to share what your products do, why you created the company. And this is the part of my sexual wellness series. So it's really opening women's eyes to experiencing pleasure and life pain-free, comfortable, and all the things. So thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm really appreciative of the interest.
So let's talk a little bit about what got you started on creating the products that you have at Rosebud.
Like most people who begin a consumer product company in any way, they begin with their own need, like something that you're doing, you're looking in the market and it's not there. So if you go back, I guess we're in our 8th year now. So There was no sexual wellness, there was no intimate wellness. There were other categories that kind of pathologized women's intimate care. Like you would go to the back of the CVS and it'd be kind of like hidden there. But there was nothing that really celebrated it. And most of the products that were available at that time were kind of chemi, And I wanted to go back to what women have known for thousands of years, is that this is a natural part of life and there are herbs that can support some of the symptoms. But when I started the company, I didn't really realize the depth of the social and cultural conditioning that care of the vulva or the vagina or any really intimate sexual care was sitting on top of. So the mission of the company quickly became to use the products as a delivery vehicle for a message of no shame and more celebration throughout all the stages of life. But yeah, the first one was a moisturizer, an intimate moisturizer for the vulva that was meant to deal with the symptoms of dryness and perimenopause and menopause. And then I found out that dryness is age independent, that people who are taking statins, antidepressants, people who have a lot of stress, it didn't matter the age, but like 1 in 4 women who are 25 are struggling with that. So by the time we pieced everything together, it was not just for moisture, it ended up becoming also for tissue replenishment and support so that the skin actually builds its collagen back up as well. So,
yeah, that's amazing. And there are women that I've talked to, and it's not necessarily just I'm having uncomfortable sex. It hurts when I use toilet paper when I go to the restroom, or my clothes feel uncomfortable, or just sitting in a chair is uncomfortable. So I think that having something available that's, like you said, not chemi. I mean, when I think back to working in a pharmacy and what was available, it was mostly just lubricants that were based in products that really aren't the best for women.
Right. So like coconut oil, for example, is a great moisturizer for the skin. It can really work for a lot of things, but it can mess up the pH in the vaginome, and not a lot of people know that. But you made a really good point about sort of daily care, self-care, that it's not just about sex. So I really encourage in the use of these balms is to do more self-pleasure and to take it and massage it into the whole pelvic basin every day, to do the pressure points in the hip, to go outer labia, inner labia, maybe some time for self-pleasure and arousal, but to really bring more blood flow into that part of the body. So a lot of what is dryness is actually not enough blood flow. You're sitting a lot, and in this part of the body, the moisture is stored subcutaneously, and in order for you to get moisture at the surface, it has to come up you have to have blood flow come up and push that moisture, which mixes with other secretions, through into the skin. And so you really want to get blood flow as well as the topical, and that comes from mechanical, from massaging and moisture massaging and things.
Yeah, and I was talking with a nurse practitioner who recommends 10 minutes a few times a week of massage and stimulation to keep that blood flowing. So it's almost like an exercise. It's like strength training for your vulva.
Well, yeah. I do this thing where you stand up and you do like hip circles and you do mini squats and I teach a lot of yoga. And so there's a Mula Bandha, which is the root lock. And for women who are interested in that, you kind of pull your outer hips together and you pull the front pelvic bone and the tailbone together. So you're like really creating a virtual girdle around the body with this intentionality. And then you lift your sex organs up toward the tailbone. And then you pulse a little bit at the perineum. And by doing that, particularly if you couple it with breath work, you can like be kind of sitting there and nobody will even know what's going on. And you're just moaning your pelvic floor. You're just bringing stimulation and blood flow into that area. And not only like creating some good activation in the genitalia, but it's also like really sending energetic currents up the whole spine, and it makes you more awake and alive and brighter eyed. So
yeah, I think that there's been so much social stigma around women's sexual wellness and pleasure for women especially, and that it has been, at least what I felt like it was, sex was for procreating and orgasm was for men, And so for women to be able to unlock their own personal pleasure and be able to start to recognize that it isn't just sexual, that it's opening up energy pathways and sensations and feeling more alive. I think that now, once we've done with our reproductive ages, it's time to really get into enjoying that part of our life.
Yeah, I'm not an evolutionary sexologist, but I will say the fact that we have full frontal matching and stimulation, that we get pleasure, like that, there are a lot of animals who don't have that, right? But the fact that you can like get pleasure from eye gazing or kissing and nothing else has to happen. It's like we're truly wired for that as part of our connective social structure also, And I think the taboo against pleasure, if you've come through any kind of Calvinist Christian lineage or Catholic Christian lineage, the early tantric educators pointed out that the church didn't have a taboo against ecstasy or pleasure. They wanted you to have that. They just wanted you to have that in the context of that being delivered through the church. So you'll go into the church and you'll have speaking in tongues, and you'll be singing, and the architecture will be stunning, and your whole system will go, ah! And the things that create that in daily life, like whether it's sexual pleasure, incredible enjoyment of food, or ecstatic dancing. Notice how many religions stop you from dancing, you know? And just understand that, or psychedelics even, like the early Christian church served psychedelics, and now they serve wine, in the some of the sacraments, but they don't want you taking that on your own. So to sort of decouple all those structures which were trying to block you from your own ecstatic pleasure, and maybe move towards more of a classical tantric worldview, which is that your entire experience of being in a body where you taste and you touch and you listen and you absorb yourself so deeply in everything that you're doing that it all expands to be spirit, that it's all alive, and that your only job in this body is to be totally present with you, Victoria, or totally present with the book I'm reading or with the juice I'm drinking, like to be so here with no cloud or story around it is like the divine intention of your embodiment. So like imagine bringing that back to your sex and your intimate wellness, and it changes everything. Like that means I can go into whatever sensation I'm having, relax around it, And it opens and suffuses the whole system. It's quite beautiful.
So when you were looking for the product, I'm interested in how all of this developed. Like, did the product development expand your awareness of your physical body and the spiritual body and all the things, or what came first? Because I'm really fascinated in your viewpoint of all of this.
You know how when you look back, you're not exactly sure, like what comes first? I'll give you a little like narrative. So I grew up in a Catholic family. And my mother left when I was 8, and then she died when I was 11 in a violent crime that was prompted by her sex. So that was a very, very, and then I was left to my own devices and raised by my father and my stepmother, but mostly in a very masculine environment. And I had children very young, but it was all like in the context of do linear masculine things. And when I hit my early 30s, I was like, this is not my natural wiring. I don't know what my natural wiring, but it's more supple and receptive. And I'm sort of like overriding my instincts. And at that point, I started studying yoga and mantra. And I kind of left the Christian church environment and was on my own for a while. I went to trauma healing. I learned anatomy. I kind of moved through all of these different modalities that would help me expand my understanding of what it meant to be free and fully alive, and to heal whatever was in my system. And then I became pretty aware that a lot of I'm a pretty well-off white woman. I wasn't having I wasn't having like racial bias. I wasn't poor. And I was looking at all of the suffering in my life, and it had pretty much all been caused by being in a woman's body. Whether that was like going into a corporate environment and being, very seriously prejudiced against, or having medical care not provided at the same level it was provided for men, or being shamed for my body, or being slut shamed, or, I could just name all the things that the suffering that I had in my system was basically saying to be in a woman's body is dangerous, or to be in a woman's body is undesirable, or to be a woman overall is to be second class. And when I started to examine that story, coupled with the yogic teachings, which say that the divine is half female and half male, which I'd never heard before, like an encouraged embodiment, like the embodiment was holy, like that was kind of moving in all my 30s and 40s. So by the time I hit perimenopause and started to think through these products, it was already in my system. But I still hadn't really grokked how deep the narrative went until I went to name the products. And when I went to find a brand name, I was on Urban Dictionary, and I put this in the little manual that we send out with some of our products, that there were over 750 names for a woman's genitals, and only like 6 were nice.
Of course.
The rest were like a taxonomy of how people saw women, like that they were talking about those parts of your body as being filthy or dirty, or it was about whoredom or things like that, or it was really like all of these categories were how the feminine was seen in general. And I finally got it, like that the way women are treated in the culture is directly related to how their reproductive capacity and their sexual capacity is looked at. So, wow, what could we do with that? I did the initial interviews with about 3,000 women. We did a survey before I started the brand of what your needs were in intimate care and what your concerns were. And they almost all said things like, oh, I have dryness, or I can't get aroused, I have no sensation, or I don't like the way I smell, or, I have a lot of itching or burning and I don't know what to do with that. And so we started formulating products directly in response to what people were saying, while at the same time investigating like what's the physical manifestation and what's the psychocultural manifestation. Like pretty soon it became clear that you not liking the way you smell has nothing to do with there actually being a problem. So we make these refresh cloths, and we never talk about them as like fixing your scent. They're just to be a gentler cleanser, so because that tissue is more sensitive. But there are things like that. I really try hard not to pathologize what's going on and just say it's like a normal part of life and this can help give you relief, but that there's nothing wrong with you, And to continue to say like, find more joy and more pleasure. I was just reading a text that instructs you, like anytime you feel joy or pleasure, even if it's a little tiny bit, like you see a friend you like, they're coming at you on the street, you feel a little bit of joy, then you like, let that joy expand and expand and expand until it fills the whole space. You don't even have to focus that much on the other person. You focus on the feeling of joy. So you start to notice, like, if I'm going to be with my body, I'm going to touch my belly, rub my belly, I'm going to touch my legs and feel my skin. Like, try all the different textures, techniques. Try a light touch, try a hard touch, try a squeeze, and just be in the pleasure of receiving and giving touch to your own skin, and see how quickly the body relaxes in being accepted, you know? So the product began to be coupled with all of these rituals and ways of connecting with the self and loving and absorbing the self, like creating a context to grow yourself up sexually, you know, to grow yourself up in self-acceptance. Like, nobody can do it for you, but you can start to create rituals and practices that will help you. Like, hell yeah, this body's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, I think I've noticed, even in the last few months, when I would get out of the shower, it was like the hurry up, get dried off, get dressed, whatever. I started taking time to like sit in a towel, and then I would put lotion on, and I would focus on what I was doing, not think about my to-do list, my grocery shopping list, like all the things in my head, turned off my phone dinging, and just really sat in the moment and felt my skin, my legs, my elbows, and I could feel a softness start to grow over a few weeks of just not just the texture of my skin, but just the softness of being felt different. And so that doesn't take a lot of time, and it doesn't take thousands of dollars to feel better. It's just taking, you know, just really enjoying and being part of that moment for yourself. Yeah, I was thinking about that when you're talking about that.
I love that. I want to pull the thread of, again, in the yoga world, the right balance is softness, suppleness, and strength. And strength without suppleness, you just break, you become rigid and hard. And suppleness without strength, you collapse like a puddle. And in a Viagra world, deciding to be soft isn't actually it has to be an intentional way of being. So what you're describing in your self-care and your ritual is so beautiful. Like, just to take that space and be with yourself. I had a friend who is a little challenged with mobility, and she feels like she's a dancer that never got to be a full dancer. And someone said to her, well, just stay in the frequency of the dancer and see what happens with the body. And she started moving around like this, you know, even though she was in the frequency of the dancer. And gradually the body met her over months. And I was like, what would it be like to step into the frequency of the lover? Like, I'm going to walk through the world like I am a lover. And it's like what you're talking about. If you're in the frequency of the lover, you move a little differently. You move with a little bit more fluidity. You're softer. You're more receptive. You're more playful. You're creating beauty. You take the time to be with yourself and with others in a different way. It's so joyful. And we're so, you know, if you're a normal woman in the West, you are very, very busy. So to do it is pretty radical.
Yeah, and it was just literally a few minutes after the shower. So it feels indulgent, but once I got over the guilt of taking that time, like closing the door and being like, no, this is going to happen. And
wait a minute. You felt guilty for taking a couple minutes to yourself after the shower?
Oh yeah, I used to. I don't now, but I used to. Oh yeah.
Can we talk a little bit more about that?
Sure.
Like just where do you think that came from?
I don't know. Well, so if I think about it, it's probably because 15 years ago I stepped out of pharmacy to stay home with our two girls, and that was my primary role, was stay-at-home mom, and so I felt like I needed to have our house tip-top shape, have the best cooked meals, have the best raised children, be accessible 24/7 to every member of my family, or else I wasn't doing my job up to snuff. And so when I started to recognize that if I didn't have any kind of enjoyment myself, and if I didn't indulge in a few minutes for myself, I'm not serving people as well. And I think that with creating a calm space for myself, I in turn create a calm space for my children.
I just want to stay with, like, you have two daughters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's such an interesting message to be like, I can do it for them, but I can't do it for me. Even in calming yourself and having pleasure for yourself, it's for them. And like this is such a transgenerational message of women. Like, actually, you are the essence of this beautiful divine spirit. You yourself are worthy of pleasure because it's your birthright, not just because it makes you a better mom. You know what I mean? And that's a tough nut to like get to, a tough seed to unwind, because if your goodness, your joy, your pleasure is only valid if it makes you a better productive worker or a better mother, that makes it another part of your job. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm losing the thread a little bit, but I feel like there's an invitation for us to be like, no, pleasure and joy have an inherent value. It's not just because it's medicinal. It's like meditation. Meditation has been a practice for thousands of years that is just part of being human. You sit it's an intrinsic good. You sit quietly so that you can feel and you can listen and you can know what's up in your body. And then and in your thoughts and in your emotions. But somehow in the West, meditation only became valuable when it started to be medicinal, prescriptive to support you being a more effective worker. Do you know? If I sit 20 minutes a day, then I'll be more capable and productive. My lists will get checked off faster. So when in capitalist societies, when an intrinsic good becomes a modality for making you a better worker or a more productive asset. Even watch when like making beauty in the home or making beauty in yourself or you being beautiful, when that is so that you can earn your place or you can earn the right to exist or you can be valuable or you can be a good mom or a good housekeeper, versus beauty is created because beauty is like the joy of creation. Beauty has an intrinsic good. You do it because you love it. But there's often a sponsoring seed in a lot of things that we do, is like to make ourselves worthy.
Oh yeah.
Or to earn your gold stars or whatever. And I just would love it if we would all take a step or two back from that. We have this, one of this simultaneously with starting Rosebud. My partner and I bought this land in Hawaii, and it's 5 acres in the front, and then it's 10 more acres, and now it's like on multiple lots, and we have 14 buildings and 20 guest rooms and a spa, and it's like a whole nother job that I never expected to have. But a lot of the ingredients for the products are also grown on the land. So,
oh, wow.
And we're kind of in the middle of retooling it to be a detox retreat. And we had our first guest last week, and it went amazing. Like, I've got a colon hydrotherapy lady out the back, and I've got amazing body workers. And the whole intention is to address exactly what you're saying. Is like, come here, be utterly nurtured, be nourished, and drop into your own inner life and see what happens. And a weird thing happens. The first week, I mean, I've seen this when I've gone on retreat, but the first week, like the first 3 days, people are like, this place is too chill. We can't be here. We can't even relax. It's too slow. Yeah. This is crazy. We're going to lose our edge if we stay here. Okay. By day 3, when they've started the colonics and they're doing the juices and they've had yoga and they've had meditation in the morning, all of a sudden you've slowed down enough. And it's just like in physical detox, like when you drink juices or you eat really light food, it can start to take energy from digestion and go to repair cells. Same thing with you slow down, and all of a sudden, all of the things that you're trying to, like, you've been dealing with all the surface level stuff, which you could call digestion of daily activity, and that goes away, and now you can drop down into the stuff you haven't looked at. And all these emotions start to surface. So the minute people get quiet and not busy, all this emotion and unprocessed stuff starts moving. And then you have a choice, like to run or to rest. And if you rest in it and you go down deeper and deeper into those places, man, stuff comes up. And you're looking at things that you haven't even thought of. You didn't even know that were still lodged in there from when you were 14 or 28 or whatever. And then big releases are happening, big emotional releases. So I just got my first letters from the people who were here last week. Like, they couldn't believe it. It was transformative. This is also sort of part of my hope between Rosebud, this place, the podcast, the book, everything is like create more space, create more liberation in yourself so you can be utterly free. And then choose what you want to do because it's your nature and you want to serve out of this love and your beautiful nature, not out of duty or because there's something wrong with you. So anyway, that was a long rant because the colon hydrotherapist walked in the back door.
No, but like you're telling me this and I was like, wow, okay, I have this running list on my phone, this note list of places I have to go to. And I'm immediately adding that because that sounds amazing.
Oh my God,
sign me up.
I was telling you that this volcano behind us, that the picture was of the volcano that went off in 2018. So this particular island is the only active volcano in Hawaii. And so if you look at the way the Hawaiian Islands are arranged, each one is a different chakra. And the big island, Hawaii, is down at the bottom. It's like the sacrum. It is literally the fire of your sexuality and all of this stuff. I'm like, how did this happen? I didn't intend this, but I ended up at Volcano Island, where the ruling deity is the goddess of fire, who like explodes and then creates more land. Right? Yeah. Like it's literally an island that says I'm about sexuality and blood and women and freedom and creation coming out of this womb of the earth, So anyway, that's perfect. I also find that funny.
but perfect at the same time.
Perfect.
It's perfect. I was thinking about when you were talking about just having pleasure and having moments of calm, not because you need to serve others, I don't remember when I heard it, but somebody used the whole, when you're on an airplane, they tell you to put your mask on first and then help the small children and those around you. And so I was running with that for so long. And that's duty right there. It's like, oh yeah, take care of yourself first, but only so you can put that mask on somebody else. And so that's not something I want to live by anymore either.
No, and we don't want to give that to your gorgeous daughters.
Let's take a quick pause to talk about something I know you'll love. If you've been listening to this series, you know that sexual wellness is such an important but often overlooked part of midlife. That's why I put together a free sexual wellness guide just for you. Inside, you will find answers to the top questions to ask your provider, reflection prompts to help you better understand your own needs, insights pulled from the amazing experts and podcast guests you're hearing right here, and I've also included a page with my favorite and vetted products. It's a resource designed to help you feel informed, empowered, and confident about your sexual health in this season of life. You can grab your free guide right now at womenmasteringmidlife.com/free-guides. That's womenmasteringmidlife.com/free-guides. You'll also find the link in the show notes below. Download it today and take the next step in reclaiming your sexual wellness.
Can I talk about the book for a second? So the reason it seems like a good time is in the whole first part of the book. So this is the book. And it's called The 9 Lives of Women, Sensual, Sexual, and Reproductive Stages from Birth to 100. Now, why would you start the book on birth to 100? The very first stage is birth to 12. And like what they're learning when they're in that stage about what it means to be a woman. And I had this beautiful friend who wrote a book called Chup, and it documents how in India, if a girl is not to have preferences, and so like they chup, chup, like kind of a shut up mode.
Okay.
And then how could you expect a girl who doesn't know her own body, who doesn't have preferences around her own body, who's like got to please everybody, to be a nice girl? How could you expect her then at 12 or 13 to be like a firm no for her sexuality or to have boundaries? Or how could you expect her at 17 to know what she wants? And so how we start early on letting the girls in on the secret that you're a gracious receiver, you're also an agent to enjoy your body in athletics, to be able to be in pleasure, to know what you want, to understand everything that's working, to name sensation. Like that can start really early. And then that really sets them up for a healthy entry into periods and reproduction and sexuality and all through their whole lives. So I start with that. And this idea that they're going to inherit what their grandmothers and mothers thought a woman's job was is like in the bones. For me and my eldest daughter, it was about body image. You're younger than me, but in the 80s, it was like starve yourself to be skinny. And you were basically meant to be as small as possible, and fat was a sign of moral decrepitude. And so, that changed in the 90s and 2000s. But my daughter, who was born in 1987, like she grew up with the echo of that, and we had to unwind that together. My body critique had to be unwound with her so that she could also extricate it from her life. And, I feel bad that I didn't do it earlier, but I didn't have anyone telling me that that wasn't right,
Yeah. Oh, I grew up, I mean, it was always about thinness. And, we had a Polish word. It's probably not even right, but it was a word that my family would use that was supposedly Polish for like an oversized woman. And they would call other women that. And I remember thinking, like, we have to stop this because you're using a term to describe a big woman and she's not even, like, what's your definition and what's wrong with women's size? So, I was taught at a very young age to be as small as possible. And I'm 5 feet tall. So I was just supposed to be like this tiny little, like, you could put me in your pocket kind of person. And, and then when I started growing and learning more about femininity and other, cultures and the way that they appreciate women and sexuality, I started recognizing, like, we need to stand taller and we need to have these conversations. I needed to have these conversations with my girls. So a lot of things I started with them, they're 14 and 16. We talked about boundaries first. I never made them hug or high five or use their bodies to touch another human if they didn't feel comfortable.
Great.
The whole, like, go give your Aunt Sally a hug or, go give grandpa a kiss. If they didn't want to, they didn't have to. And I would stand firm and I would defend them. I would get in front of them if I had to. But they needed to understand, if that doesn't make me feel comfortable, I don't have to use my body to make someone else comfortable.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. And they can also have phrases so it doesn't become awkward. It could be like, hey, Uncle Joe, I see you over there. Here's a virtual hug. And give them language to deflect the social expectation, because part of it is like just not wanting to be rude or to make others happy is like wired into our systems too. So that's amazing that you did that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, the people pleasing.
If anybody's listening and not watching, when she said, when Victoria started speaking about inhabiting her body fully, she literally
I
grew 2 inches. She stood up even straighter.
I did.
It's so beautiful. Like, okay, what does it mean? This is a place to dwell. What does it mean to inhabit your body fully out to the edges? And to feel the connection, like a lot of people live from the throat to the head. And some people will drop down heart to the head, but to even notice how your voice changes when you drop your sensation all the way down to the base of the body. And now you're speaking from your womb center, or you're speaking from the gut, and just watch how different even like the import of your words lands differently. It's super interesting. Once you start to include the whole body in your expression, you're even taken more seriously.
I'm going to sit with that.
You're breathing.
I'm going to sit with that one.
Tell me something from your heart.
Something from my heart?
Like you could even say the same words. Like, I don't know, you love your daughters. If you say, like, I love my daughters, and you say it just from your throat, but you're saying it. Okay. I love my daughters.
I love my daughters.
And now say it from your heart.
I love my daughters.
And see if you say it all the way down from your womb.
I love my daughters. like gut.
Right? I mean, it's weird, but it's like, and then you can start to notice, like, where are you speaking from in your life? Yeah. And the more you're speaking from, like, it's just, and it also is like a truth teller. Someone once told me that the vagina and the womb are like oracles. And if you don't know what's good for you, or you're confused in the moment, you're like in your head, ask your belly and then ask your womb, or ask your vagina, and see, you'll get, and they'll know, like, you'll get an instant hit, because your womb knows what's safe for you. You know, it's very difficult, like, for you to be in an unsafe situation, a legitimately unsafe situation, not talking about a kink situation, a legitimately unsafe situation, and for your genitals to relax. Your whole system will like tighten up, and you'll know instantly that you're not, and that this is not good for me. Yeah.
I recognized, I didn't recognize the feeling of not being safe until I recognized the feeling of safety.
Yes. What does safety feel like?
Well, safety, I almost feel like I can collapse. Like I have no guard up. I feel like I am fully present. I'm calm. I don't have to protect myself or anyone around me. And so once I had that feeling of safety around a person, I was like, oh, wow, I was actually very unsafe in this previous situation.
And you probably get funnier.
Yes.
And more creative.
More creative, more joyful. For the longest time, people would say, what do you do for fun? And I'm like, huh. Yeah, like we're so task oriented, you know? And I think that sometimes those roles of, I remember having a conversation about why do the dads get to have all the fun? Like the dads get to go do the mini golf on the weekend while the mom is, you know, doing something or having a day for herself. And it's like, well, why don't we have fun too? Like I forgot how to have fun. And now it's dancing in the kitchen when I'm cooking, and it's reading books I actually enjoy and listening to music I enjoy. It's having conversations with people I really want to talk to. You know, it's service that served me, finding those projects that really speak more to me instead of just an expectation of a motherly duty or a wifely duty or a community duty that was something that didn't really resound with me. Then I was even able to step into that and really own it. And even this year in a function that we had, I had a lot of people come up to me and they say, like, this is your thing. Like, this is you. Like, you own this. You rock this. You have to keep doing this, because they could see a difference in my energy.
Yeah. So, you know those WWJD bracelets? Mm-hmm. We replaced those with what would pleasure do?
Oh.
What would pleasure do? And you can find like, okay, if I'm sitting here in this chair, even right now, I could take a moment and go, what could I do in this moment to make it even more comfortable and more pleasurable? No, I might move the chair to the left a little bit and sit on it more evenly. And, oh, you know, I don't particularly like the texture of this on my feet. I might put a pillow there. And then all of a sudden, oof, I could relax my shoulders a little bit more. And then once you start to ask that question, like, what would pleasure do in every situation, you like, how could this moment be even better than it is? That there's always, like, once you open the aperture to that question, like, things just start popping. It's a very good inquiry. But it has to be valid, like pleasure has to be a valid inquiry, you know? I'm so fascinated by this interplay between duty and self-love that you're raising. And I think you're hitting a point in your life that is, like, pretty typical. Your children are mid-teens. They're more independent. You're approaching empty nest, not that far away. And so so a lot of times at this stage, you are able to turn your attention back to, okay, who was I? Where was I? And it's not so much it's a continuation of who you were before you had your children, because you've utterly changed. You've become and grown and been lit from within. And I mean, someone will say, oh yeah, I raised all these children. And think about what's included in that. All the hospital trips, all the doctor visits, all the graduations, all the shopping trips, all the late nights, all the worry, all the joy, all the you've become utterly shaped by them, right? They birthed you as much as you birthed them. And now you're like, okay, well, who have I become? And what is, like, the little calling? What is the whisper in my ear about who I will be when my daily life is not so absorbed with caring for them? And it's both a little bit of grief for many women, and it's also a little bit of excitement. And to lean into the excitement part and to keep opening your ears for what your true essence is now. It's just a very exciting time.
Yeah, I've been really trying to sit in the quiet and listen to what speaks to me a lot more than what's expected when they're gone. You know, for me, When I was 16, it was time to get a job. I wanted to work. So I was taken to different places and filled out applications, and the pharmacy was hiring. So I became a cashier at a pharmacy, and then they needed technicians. So I went through that training. And then somebody said, you'd be great as a pharmacist. You should apply to pharmacy school. And so I did, and I got into University of Georgia, and then I was on this track, and then I was working in a pharmacy and going to pharmacy school, and that just became my path. And it's so specific that once you get on it, you can't really get off of it. And when I got to sit and think like, okay, what would I do? Would I re-enter that? That just would not bring me peace. It would not bring me happiness. And I did what was easy and what was put in front of me instead of what I was really passionate about. And so now it's time to think like, okay, aside from doing this podcast, which is selfishly very, very indulgent, I love the fact that I could say to somebody like you, I have a podcast. Do you want to come have a conversation with me? Because if I didn't have this, I don't know how we would connect and be able to have this interaction.
So many things to say to you about that. Number one, how we would connect is you'd say, hey, my name's Victoria. Do you want to have a conversation? We can have tea, And I think it's really interesting that you can just ask a girl out on a date when you're in midlife, on a mom date. You can just say, hey, you know what? I like the things you're doing in the world. You want to meet up? So first of all, I would have totally done that anyway because you sound really lovely. And so there's that. And then this other piece, like, you know what I hear you're telling the pharmacy story is that I hear how much you like to belong. And how sweet it is that you were like there in a place and you were loved and supported and surrounded by others and they wanted to help you. And how great that was. What a wonderful instinct, know? And that value of belonging and being part of something is going to be something that you carry through your whole life. And then to couple that with what your essence is inviting now is great. It's beautiful. So some of the questions people bring in finding their purpose in midlife or who they are. Sometimes the places we serve are coming out of our greatest points of pain. Or sometimes if you remember like what you liked to do before you were 7, before you sort of got pulled into the grading and school system, like what really brought you joy as a child and leaning more into that, seeing if that's still alive for you. I mean, for most kids, it's music and play and art and things like that. So I don't know that it translates into a career at this point, but.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned briefly that you have the products and then you had the podcast. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your podcast and what kind of topics you discuss and what that brings to women's
it's getting
wellness.
Wackier and wackier, my podcast. Started out on menopause and midlife and sexuality as a support for the products because I wanted people to have the context of like, there's so much to say and there's so many experts in sex. So we've done a bunch of sex episodes. And then, I did a lot of work in collective trauma. And so I wanted to really speak to sexual trauma, to church-based sexual trauma, to all of those kinds of things. So we did a whole cycle on that. And then it really began to expand into consciousness. And so I would say we're mixing up ways to think about consciousness, ways to think about spirituality, a lot more stuff on Tantra, which is, my lifelong study. And I was a little bit afraid to present that to the public, but now I'm just going with it. I have, deep knowledge in these areas. And what I've been finding in the last 5 years or so is that the body has all of these levers to switch out to being part of the great unity. Like to enter into a real sense of being one with everything, and then to come back into the body and fully enjoy its individuation. And those are things like meditation, things like dance, that can happen in sex, particularly if you have great sex or orgasmic relational encounters in general. It can happen through herbs and psychedelics. It can happen through medicines like that. And it can also happen through grace. And so you start to look at like, okay, what did music, drumming does it as entrainment in it that frees up the sense, frees the boundary of the self. So if those are true, if like your natural animal body knows how to bounce out into the oneness when it gets overwhelming to be in a body and then to come back into your deep pleasure, then, and modern life has sort of dumbed our senses. So that we're like always busy, and we can't tap into that innate capacity for awe and wonder and reverence. Like, what can we speak about on the show that invites experts in that area to come and share their knowledge about how to crack back open to your innate magnificence and live in more peace and ease and joy. So the show's got a lot of that. Today's episode is with a young man who speaks about the evolution from Homo sapiens to Homo luminous, that he feels like we're really going through an upgrade as a species that's far beyond any evolutionary steps we've taken before. Yeah, so a lot of things like that. I'll still do body, I'll still do sexuality occasionally or menopause occasionally, but for the most part, it's really how do you live as fully as you can for your whole life long. I've done a bunch on aging also in recent episodes because, in the book, I was looking at this block of time after menopause. Mm-hmm. And, basically it's like 52 is the average age of menopause, and then basically say post-menopause.
Yeah.
Did you know that there are 3 stages after menopause that are firmly, easily defined, and that they have biomarkers and they have different developmental tasks, just like you have in the early stages of a girl's life, and to sort of invite an exploration of what is life really like for older women who are in their joy, and to open up a possibility sphere of that at 80 your life could be like this. Or even to imagine that the body might look one way, but the inner experience is totally free and liberated. And just to really expand the understanding of what it's like to live in a body our whole lives long. So that's the show. I like the show. Similar to you, I like talking to people. And I will say that my inner experience is that the noise of the internet is so loud right now. There's so much content that I really want to do things that are high signal. And I've been teaching a lot more with small groups of 20 and 6-week blocks. And that is with people who really want to go deep on a subject, and they want to interact over the material, and they want to do practices. And I'm finding that so satisfying, not just because of the depth, but because the podcast format doesn't allow for a lot of back and forth with the listener. Mm-hmm. And so I miss that experience of the wisdom and genius of the people who are listening, or the wisdom and genius of people who are in the class, suddenly amplifies everything. So I would say the pod is great, but it's a little bit too one-sided for me to fully enjoy it. Okay.
That's interesting. And I think I was thinking about your evolution of the podcast, and I feel like I'm past year 1, and I've done weekly episodes consistently for over a year, and it's definitely not what it started out to be. Right. And I have visions of it changing and evolving because we're complex. If I were to just stay in one lane and not change, then it wouldn't be evolving with me, and then I would get bored and I wouldn't be interested in the subject matter anymore. Right. So I can see that, and I think that we're such complex creatures that just to have it be where I'm expected to talk about one thing for the rest of my life it just wouldn't work for me.
Well, that's true. My daughter-in-law is the top podcasters, one of the top podcasts in the country, like a Time 100 podcast.
Oh, wow.
And it's a science show called Ologies. And she's been doing that for a long time, and it has never changed.
Okay.
But the topic of it has never changed. It has never changed because within science, there's an infinite ability every week, and it's nothing about her. She maintains the same tone she maintains sort of the same tone of being humorous and in inquiry, and then she allows the guests to really talk about whatever they're doing. And everybody else I know who does a more qualitative podcast doesn't stay on brand, and then it sort of kind of fades away for them. I like the idea of closed sets, like a season, where the season has a topic. That seems to work also pretty well. The question becomes is it for our personal expression, or is here to serve the listener? And in what way? And, there's a guy, people who do money, they're just talking about money and making that better and better, or housing and rehabbing housing, or the housing market, is better and better. But when you're really doing it more for the inquiry and how to be a better and better human, it's hard sometimes to remember that there are people who are starting out just at the beginning of that journey, And so you have people who really stick to their knitting. I'm just going to talk about menopause and perimenopause or child development. And they'll keep coming back to the same points, even though they're far beyond it. And so I'm in the inquiry is the show for me and the listeners who've been on the journey with me a long time? Or is it for anyone to get the basic message that their body is holy, holy, you know? So I don't know. I think that's
an interesting way to look at it. Yeah. That's very interesting. And that's a good point.
I feel like
that I didn't
like half of that. That was really thinking.
Well, that's helpful for me, actually, as a podcast host, to remember that while I'm growing, there will be things that I selfishly want to talk about for myself. And then there are things that I should continue to perpetuate a message or change a message or update a message in the same topic for the people who are just starting their journey. Because it is comparison, you know, I don't want to have anyone try to compare their chapter 1 to my chapter 20.
Yeah, that's a good point. And their chapter 1 is also so. You're inviting something really important. Every single person is coming as their own irreplaceable spark of the light. They all have their own experiences. They all have their own wisdom and genius. They all have something to teach. We all have something to teach each other. And there is no linear phasing. There's not like a step 1 to 20 really in anyone's life. There's a where you're starting from, and in your unique fractal, like which parts where you can grow. And what do you know that other people don't that you could give? And this is such a beautiful shift from the idea of like a hierarchy with a teacher at the front who knows it all. And like, I love this. It's both feminine and it's evolutionary, that everybody knows something valuable that they teach the whole. Everyone's experience is valid and beautiful. And that we're in a mutual increase more than a talking at. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So you talked about the book, but you talked about the beginning from birth to...
Yes.
So let's talk beyond birth, because I want to get into this book a little bit.
Oh my God, this book took me 3 years to write. This is my 9th book.
Okay.
And the other books were on human sexuality, on living into our unity consciousness, like how do we get the idea that we're separate and we all have to like earn our right to exist. I did one on social evolution. I did a lot on ritual and on sexual pleasure. But this particular one took 3 years, and I have a combination in here of what is this stage about? So, okay, let me back out. So in the old model of women's life stages, it was maiden, matron, crone. And maiden is someone who can have a child but has not yet had a child. Matron is someone who's had a child and can have more. And crone is someone who can no longer have a child. So all of your life stages were defined relative to your ability to reproduce. Mm-hmm. And that felt to me to be a very old-fashioned and slim concept of what the stages of a woman's life was. And because it also takes out all the things that you're doing in the world that are not related to childbearing and diminishes them completely. So what are the developmental stages, the biological, physical stages, and the spiritual stages of each part of our lives? And so I went through and looked at all of the research. I interviewed like at least 100 people for the book, both experts and individuals who are living in those life stages, got their stories, extrapolated some of that stuff, and then put it all together for these 9 stages of a woman's life. And it's birth to menarche, or first period. It's first period to your first intercourse, which in the United States is about 17 on average is first intercourse. Sovereignty, which is when you have your sexual activation up until the time that you have reproductive intent. So just think about that for a minute, like 17 to 25, 26 about is that age group. In this age, you're like really finding what you like sexually, but you definitively do not want to get pregnant. So you're starting to learn how and deal with all of the experiences of your yeses, your nos, your sexual preferences, all the stuff around reproductive care and birth control. And so you're also in this stage learning sort of radical self-love, and also your brain is still maturing, right? Because girls' brains come online fully around 22, 23, and boys at 24, 25. Mm-hmm. So you're also still like living into who you are becoming as an adult. So those are the first 3 stages. And then the next stage is sort of now you're fully in woman stage and matrescence, which is the intent to become a mother. So whether or not you do become a mother, this stage of life has its own concerns. Like there is no time in history that a woman who is intending to have a child has had so many decisions available to her. Like, first of all, should I have a child or not have a child was not a question that most women could ever ask themselves for all of human history. The second one was like, should I have it alone or with a partner? Should I have it naturally or should I do it IVF? Should I choose the gender or not? You know, there's so many things that are available now that just weren't there. So in matrescence, in that section of the book, Maternal Intent to Perimenopause, I talk a lot about the possibilities and the problems of this stage. And what, you know, there's also some really detailed maps in there, like the development of the fetus next to what's happening in the woman's body that show this incredible intertwined helix of the perfect, incredible design of what it's like to bear life in our bodies. And that whole section also includes a big trans-global look at the fourth trimester of postpartum care. It looks a lot at the choice to be child-free. It looks at when you're child-free not by choice and how that lands in the culture. So that's a big fat section of the book. And then the perimenopause piece, which is stage 5, goes into, you know, now your body's shifting, your eggs are sputtering out a little bit, that's no longer as vital. There's about 34 crazy symptoms that are happening. You're also getting to sort of this point where you're at, where if you've had children, they're probably coming into maturity, which is opening up all kinds of identity questions again. So we go into that. And then the active menopause piece is, you know, when you're really going through the symptoms and the big change, like your eggs are just giving out, and how to manage and hold that. And how to hold that in a way that it's an invitation to you entering the gateway to the free period of your life, which is the 7th stage right after menopause, the most incredible stage. Like 52 to 65, I feel is like no one said. You've got a great amount of self-awareness. Your body is no longer going through its crazy up and down cycles. You probably have a little money in the bank. Children are probably on the way out to do their thing. You might have things with your parents that are consuming time, but there's like this wisdom and expansion where now you have the freedom and the capacity to move into this next stage to move into what you are here to do outside of raising your beautiful children. So that is the free period. Then stage 8 is like the mid to late 60s to 80. And you have some biomarkers that come in at that stage that make it more difficult to process sugar, for example, or to make muscle. And there's all kinds of things that are happening in the cognition. And so in that stage, we're looking more and more at sort of biohacking and how do you stay fully online and how do you stay fully mobile? And then what are the tasks of that age? People are still very sexual. They still need a lot of touch. And we look at that also. And what is longevity? Like, what is the movement for longevity? And the final stage, the resolution, which runs from like the early 80s until end of life, if you're lucky enough to get there at all, average age of death is 81 for women. So if you're lucky to get into your 80s, you know, what are the tasks of that age in terms of resolution? And most women of that age, if they've been married, have lost their spouses. Where do you get because they die earlier and they're older generally to start with. And so now you're in this last phase. And there's not a lot of touch in that phase unless you intentionally go after it. Self-pleasure, contact from, paid contact from massage therapists, cuddling with your pets, or making deliberate intentions to get together with other people and just like touch each other because you need it. You need like the oxytocin from that. But also like looking at that last stage of life as like really stepping into wisdom and legacy and not thinking of it as like fading out, but like living fully until you don't, until you're no longer alive. And the interviews with some of the women in their 80s will blow your mind. It's like the things they're doing. One woman, 84 years old, just had another solo show in a museum of new works as a painter. And there's a lot in there also about the media biases of elderhood. And you Google old people stuff and you basically get people in wheelchairs versus like this vibrancy that's actually happening. There's a lot in there on how to have transgenerational conversations, for like how to have empathy if you're 80 now, how to have empathy and understand what's different for a woman who's in her 20s. If you're 20 now, how to have empathy or understanding for your mom who's going through menopause. Each chapter ends with empathizing with this life stage. So it's quite a rich conversation. My hope with it is there's a couple of people who are running book clubs on it, and that's my dream. Is that people are using the book to create a structure and a guideline that then they can have richer conversations with the women in their own lives. And like mothers, daughters, grandmothers doing it together would be outrageously more good than I can ever imagine. So it won the Kirkus Indie Book of the Month in August.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's gotten a Kirkus star. And so it's getting really good reviews. And yeah.
Well, and I think we need more of the messaging that there is beauty in the transition and there's excitement and there's things to look forward to instead of this doomsday approach to menopause. And I think that I had a conversation with somebody who's a grief coach about the ambiguous grief of menopause, of losing reproductive abilities and the changes that come with that. But with that, it's also, for me, the idea is more excitement right now than grief. Just like the possibility, the endless possibilities of the time and the creativity and the energy that can be put into other things and other passions. That's something to be excited about.
Yeah, so ambiguous grief is an interesting way to put it because, yeah, there's like a little grief of, but also notice how much of the grief is because the culture takes power away. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm not going to be hot. Nobody's going to want me. I can't have a baby.
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, it's not because the grief is like there seems to be a little seed, a kernel of fear in that grief that I won't be valued if I don't look a certain way or if I'm not like considered a sexually appealing of reproductive prime. And that comes from an immature masculine. Shh. I'm so lucky. My partner's
That's so perfect.
My partner's in his 60s and he's like a big whiskery beard and he, he's got age spots all over, but he's like really, really athletic and he's so fun. And he's got no interest in the young girls. And like, it makes me so happy because like, I really appreciate that he's like his primary intent is our friendship and our alliance and our daily like flow with one another. And like, what a liberatory thought that we could actually age together in our joy of aging rather than me having to like continually like try to package myself up and perform like I was going to be perpetually 55 or 45 or 35. Holy moly, what a relief that he's like in the maturity of like, we're doing this together and we're like uplifting and honoring our daughters and sons who are now in their 30s doing their thing and seeing their peers as our daughters and sons, not as objects of desire.
Yeah.
And that only comes when you can be mature. So how much of the grief, the ambiguous grief, is actually like loss of power and fear? I don't know. Because if it wasn't that, it's like, whoa, the world's waiting.
That's true. Oh, there's so much to unpack with that. That's a whole nother hour though.
Oh my God, that's a whole other thing. So look, I really love the book. I love the products. That's been 8 years. We have a really loyal base. Like I would say 60% of our sales are from repeat customers. A lot of people have stuff on subscription. I've added body oils. I've done a lot of cool stuff. My very, very loving that. And it will always be my like bread and butter. The stuff that is around how do we love ourselves for our whole lives long and create more freedom not only for our daughters, but for our sons, to invite our partners and the masculine into this idea of half and half God, and to magnify them and to create relaxation in them and agency in ourselves. Like it's such a beautiful inquiry. So the combination of the writing the books and doing the podcast that kind of like fits with the products I hopefully will sit as a legacy for me. I'm starting to think about like, what is my like body of work over a lifetime? I'm turning 60 and I'm kind of taking a look back. Like, do I want to have this? Am I satisfied with what I've created? And is this the direction I want to go next? And I would say this book is a big milestone creation for me. And yet it's not the end. I have at least 3 more. And they might not take the form of the book because I'm not sure that most people are reading books anymore. I think reading in general has declined quite a bit. So we'll see. Maybe this book has gotten optioned for a documentary.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Where each episode would be like a profiling of each of these 9 stages of a woman's life. And I'm just so excited to see the possibility of that turning into something.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I look forward to seeing that on the horizon. And I think that two of my favorite products are the arousal serum and the honor balm, are things that I've been a fan of and recommended to so many women forever, because they smell nice, they feel nice, they're full of nice ingredients. I mean, there's nothing but praise I could say about those products. So
the Honor Balm has an ingredient in it that it's bisabol. It's an extract of German chamomile that actually does replenish and build skin. So that's great. And the reason you like the Arouse serum is actually Hawaii, because there's a plant in it called Spilanthes ecmella, or buzz button, and it was used in Hawaiian culture. They would chew on the flower head of this little flower, and that ingredient makes the mouth foam. Like, it makes the salivation responses so intense that the mouth starts to tingle and foam. And then the little foaming bubbles go and clean the teeth. It's good for oral health. And they also use that for sexual stimulation, because it's doing the same thing. It's creating like a salivation response in the vaginal area. And it's plumping like, you can put it on your lips, the Arouse serum, and you'll get like the plumping and tingling of one of those lip serums. It's doing the same thing on the labia. And so like I said, we tried to pull in indigenous wisdom and knowledge for what did you use as sexual aids? What did you use for moisture? So the Arouse has been out of stock for 4 months. It's back in stock next week in a new size at a lower price point. So it's good timing to come and try that if you haven't tried it.
And I'll have all of that information in the show notes for anyone who wants to take a look at it. So thank you so much for this conversation. It's been a wonderful hour getting to know you and have sometimes I feel like I was like, wait, am I the guest or am I the host right now? And I love it.
It's so fun. It's so fun. I love sharing your stories about your family and about where you're at in your life also. And I think it's going to be really exciting to see what you do next. You know, where you take the pod, and like also what your all that inner listening bears in your own life. So keep me posted.
I will. I'm going to come to your retreat. I'm going to be one of your guests. I'll be like, hi, it's me. It's the podcast host.
You should come. There's this woman here, Sam, who's doing the colon hydrotherapy. Kyle, who's craniosacral. She's an herbalist. She's a witch. She makes these big mason quart jars of tea every morning with custom herbs for you, and then you like sip it all day. And a lot more to say about that, but whatever. Yes, come anytime.
That sounds exciting. I will. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for joining me. Thank you for listening to this episode of Women Mastering Midlife. If something you heard today resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with a friend who might need a little extra support on her midlife journey. Remember, small changes can make a big difference, and you don't have to navigate this transition alone. We will be back next week with more expert guidance and compassionate conversations to help empower you to master midlife on your terms. Until then, you can find us on Instagram at Women Mastering Midlife, or come connect with me directly at Miss Victoria Byrd. And you're looking for deeper connection and support, be sure to join us in the Women Mastering Midlife community. We'd love to continue the conversation with you there. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and review this podcast. It helps us reach more amazing women mastering midlife just like you. You'll find all the links from today's episode and ways to connect in the show notes below. See you next time.